It's Monday, October 11th, and this is now on HNN.
My concern is we had no explanation really that was, I feel, very legitimate or believable.
Still developing right now, Southwest Airlines cancels more flights.
Prior to COVID, we were a nightlife place.
Oahu restaurants and bars can now serve alcohol until midnight. We've got the details on other loosening COVID rules.
I'm Nancy Chen at the finish line of the Boston Marathon, the first time the event has been held in 2.5 years.
Everyone's just happy to be able to do Boston.
Plus, new video of that big quake that rocked the state yesterday. These stories and more coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon. Thanks for watching This Is Now on this Monday. You've got Jonathan and Ashley coming to you from the HNN Digital Center. We've got a lot of news to get to, but we want to get started with those latest numbers being reported by the State Department of Health.
4 more Hawaii residents have died after contracting COVID-19. The state is also reporting 113 new infections today. The breakdown by island shows 69 cases on Oahu, 18 on the Big Island, 10 each on Kauai and Maui, and 6 residents were diagnosed out of state. Meanwhile, Governor Ige gave an update on when we can expect to see COVID restrictions easing on the neighbor islands. Here's what he told the Star Advertiser.
One of the differences that we have in place is that neighbor islands have been a lot more aggressive about implementing restrictions and enforcing them. And so, you know, they have been able to continue with weddings on an outdoor basis. And so they are slightly ahead in the sense that those kinds of activities were not shut down. And so we continue to meet with the mayors a couple times a week to really think through the next phase about how we can, in a smart way, look at dropping restrictions and don't end up, endangering or inflaming that spike that really is what we're all trying to avoid.
Well, the governor and Oahu's mayor announced big changes for professionally organized events. Our Sammy Salina gathered new reaction now from businesses and residents to these new guidelines.
Most of the folks I talked to were happy at least some of the restrictions were going to be changed, and they're looking forward to those larger events.
Well, it's a good thing for the athletes, the schools, the parents, friends who can go see the games if they can get into the gates.
I think it's awesome. You know, I think it's really awesome. I fully encourage, I'm happy that the governor is moving in this direction. I think it's been a little bit too restrictive, especially for the games.
But I personally think that it's time to do that, to follow the trend that's going on most of the mainland because everything has suffered, the economy has suffered.
But some businesses tell us that more needs to be done to help them out. They're still held to social distancing restrictions and the Safe Access program, which they say has definitely affected their sales. However, the recent change to allow bars and restaurants to serve alcohol until midnight will definitely help them out.
That helps us a lot. You know, prior to COVID, we were a nightlife place. You know, we were open throughout the day and the night. And frankly, people, they want things to do. And after 10 o'clock, there's not much to do once you have that cutoff.
The governor said there are plans to allow larger gatherings on neighbor islands as well, and he anticipates to be making an announcement on that soon. Sammy Solina for This Is Now.
UH will be allowed to have a limited number of fans at their next home game. Athletics director Dave MATLIN gave us an update on Sunrise.
You know, we're excited and, you know, we're grateful to have, you know, fans in the stands again for our football games, soccer, and Wahine volleyball, too. So it's going to be great for our student athletes and, you know, just put some extra pep in our step going forward.
Were you hoping to do this sooner?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, in some ways, we would have liked to be earlier, especially for our student athletes. But, it's really about looking forward and being grateful for where we're at. And, also we have to be appreciative of a community that does care about the health and safety of the people of Hawaii. So, we think we have good protocols. We'll do this safely, and hopefully this is something we can build on in the future.
Hey, kind of walk me through. Let's start from the parking lot and getting into the gates and what people can expect there at the Clarence T.C. Ching Athletic Complex.
Yeah, well, as you know, we'll be limited to 1,000 fans for football at the Clarence T.C. Ching Complex. Parking will be mainly in the structure, and what will happen is we'll have a check-in site for the Luma. You have to download the LumaSite app. We're going to have all this information on our website probably by tomorrow, because our first game obviously is in about 2 weeks. And you do that check-in, and then you have your ticket check-in also, because all the seating will be reserved.
Okay, so you'll be reserved, and they're worried about people arriving all at once and leaving all at once. Are you doing anything to kind of mitigate that?
Yeah, we have 4 different grandstands, so we have 8 different gates. So what we'll do is we'll filter them into different gates. It probably averages to about 100 and 125 per gate. So that will be monitored. And basically that's what the one good thing about the LumaSite app and the ticket locations where people will be able to enter different locations.
Okay, talk about food for a moment. No food, right?
No food. We will have water. We're working on what our water plan will be. We actually have a big meeting today about that.
Sounds good. Let me see here. Rainbow Wahine Volleyball. Anything on that at the moment?
Well, that will be 500. We'll come up with more specific plans. That first game will be after October 19th, so I think it's later in the month, the last weekend of the year. But it will be at 500 fans with no food, masked and socially distanced, and 100% vaccinated.
Got it. In regards to the football game, let me go back real quickly. How are we determining what 1,000 people? Is it first come, first served? They just got to get their tickets, or?
No, what we're doing is we have tickets for our athletic and staff contractual ones with coaches. UH students, 10% of the tickets will be for UH students. Then we have an allotment, 100 to 150 for our visiting team. And then the remaining tickets will go to season ticket holders, corporate partners, according to our priority point system.
Okay, so how many people, so these tickets are all allotted already, or they will be given out, and then will there be any for the public?
Yeah, good question. We'll be reaching out to all the people who will be receiving tickets during this week. Yeah, I mean, basically, there are no tickets available for individual public, just because when you with 1,000 number, we have quite a few more season ticket holders than that. So yeah, we'll be reaching out to all the people who receive them during this week.
Are you hopeful that by the end of the season, maybe by senior night, we'll be able to up that number up from upwards of 1,000? Hopefully.
Yeah. We're hopeful and optimistic with that. Obviously, our job is to do this in a safe and healthy manner with the 1,000 that we're given, and then to build it hopefully for the second game and maybe even increase it for the final game. Also, as you mentioned, for senior night, that would be special, and it'd be it's going to be a pretty impressive facility that when it's full. There, I think will be a great home field advantage for our Rainbow Warriors.
Southwest Airlines canceled hundreds of more flights today following a weekend of major disruptions. The Dallas-based airline blamed air traffic control issues and bad weather for what it's calling, quote, operational challenges that resulted in more than 1,900 canceled flights over Saturday and Sunday. The FAA took the unusual step of pushing back against that explanation. Southwest Airlines was the only airline to report such large percentages of canceled flights and delays over the past few days.
I'm willing to not judge them for one error. So going forward, I think we'll still be loyal Southwest customers, but this was frustrating.
The widespread disruptions began shortly after the pilots union asked a federal court on Friday to block the airline's order that all employees get vaccinated against COVID-19. But both the company and the pilots union denied reports of a SICKOUT to protest the mandatory vaccinations. We've got some new details to pass along from across the Pacific now. Sydney, Australia is starting to open back up and loosen COVID restrictions. CNN's Angus Watson explains exactly what's happening.
Joy, relief and some apprehension in Sydney, Australia, the country's largest city, coming out of lockdown after 106 days on Monday. People allowed to visit family and friends at their homes, go out for a meal at a restaurant, a drink at a bar, go to the gym or get a haircut. For the first time since June, when an outbreak of the Delta variant of coronavirus set in and forced the city into lockdown. That began with just one case. Some months later, over 60,000 cases and over 300 deaths. But as those cases have risen, so has the city and the state of New South Wales's vaccination rate. Now, Sydney is able to open on Monday because it's achieved this goal of 70% of the adult population fully vaccinated. That means people are going out with more confidence now. Yes, there is concern about cases increasing, about pressure on the hospital system, but people who are vaccinated now are able to enjoy some freedoms and be confident in doing so. We were at a pub earlier in central Sydney, the Angel Hotel, which was giving out free beers to celebrate the end of the lockdown. The publican said that high vaccination rate is giving him the confidence to keep his doors open.
I think we're lucky that Australia's actually got a higher vaccination base than what the UK does at the minute, which has been great. People have been jumping on it, which is excellent for us. We're going to hit 80% next week, which is really good.
The pub is way better than drinking in your own house. 106 days in my house is nothing compared to the pub.
Celebrations going on in Sydney there. The next step will be for other lockdown Australian cities to follow, like Canberra, the capital of the country, and Melbourne, Victoria, still locked down, still with coronavirus in the community. That's very different to many other places in Australia. We're living without the virus. They've closed off their borders to the states that do have it. The next step for Australia will be for vaccination rates across the country to catch up to one another. That's the first step. The next step will be for international borders to open. Angus Watson, Sydney, Australia.
And to Washington now, where it's going to be another busy week for Congress. For more on what's happening on Capitol Hill, we want to bring in our White House correspondent and senior national editor at Gray Television, John Decker. Thank you so much for being with us, John. Now, the debt ceiling debate has been resolved for now until at least early December, but President Biden's infrastructure bill, along with that $3.5 trillion Build Back Better agenda, seem to have stalled. What are you hearing about those proposals? Any progress?
No progress so far, Ashley. They're still working on it, however, but there's still this impasse, an impasse between the progressive Democrats on one side, the centrist Democrats on another, and we saw this impasse play itself out last week. There was supposed to be a vote on both of those bills last Monday, last Thursday, last Friday. It didn't happen, and now the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, is promising that there will be a vote on both of these pieces of legislation by the end of this month, by the end of October. But as long as this impasse exists, I just don't see that vote happening on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Right. And I know there's a lot of debate within the parties themselves, right? Democrats and Republicans.
Well, there is. The debate on the Democratic Party is really focused on two U.S. senators, Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, and Kyrsten Sinema, Democrat from Arizona. They don't think that the reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better bill that you just described, is a bill that they can support. They say it's too large in size, too large in scope. There, at least for Senator Manchin, he's suggesting a much smaller piece of legislation, maybe $1.5 trillion. But that is not going over well with progressives in the Democratic Party, and that's where that impasse exists right now. President Biden this week will likely continue to do outreach to the Democratic Party, to Senator Manchin, to Senator Sinema, trying to find that middle ground where there can actually ultimately be a vote in the House of Representatives on both of these pieces of legislation.
Right. Let's switch gears now to President Biden's approval rating. The latest poll shows it hit a new low at 38%. His White House press secretary blames the pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's more than the pandemic, actually, Ashley. There's a number of factors. Certainly what we saw play out at the end of August with that chaotic withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan, that did not play well with what President Biden wants to project, which is a competent, steward of American foreign policy and military policy. So you have that, but you also have what we just discussed, this stalled agenda. President Biden, according to those who support him, has not accomplished much during his first 9-10 months in office. They want to see more accomplished, including the passage of an infrastructure bill, the passage of a police reform bill. That has not happened yet, and this has impacted how core groups who are part of the constituency that supports President Biden view him right now. So he's seen declines in key demographic groups: Black Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, young voters, women voters. All of those groups have seen a decline in the president's popularity. The White House believes he can bring it back up once he gets some wins under his belt, but it's not yet clear where those wins will happen and when those victories will happen.
Let's talk about the House committee that's investigating the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. Now, the president waived his executive privilege on these Trump-era documents to give the committee these files, these case files. Talk about what this process is and what is, waiving his executive privilege. What does that mean?
Absolutely, and let me explain this to you as an attorney. So executive privilege is a power that the current president of the United States has, the person sitting in the Oval Office. And so that's the reason why former President Trump, a former president, asked President Biden to invoke executive privilege as it relates to documents and emails and call logs that were taking place during the course of the Trump administration. It is only the current president that could do that. After that letter was sent to the Biden White House, the White House counsel's office indicated that they would not grant executive privilege to this material. And as a result, the National Archives, which now possesses all of those documents, will turn over those documents to the select committee that is investigating what happened here in Washington at the Capitol on January 6th. We don't know what's contained in those documents, but that will be a big part in terms of that committee's investigation.
All right, John Decker from the White House, thank you so much for keeping us up to date with everything happening on Capitol Hill.
All right, John Decker there, our new White House correspondent. Good to hear from him.
Yep.
Let's turn it over now to Guy Hoggy, who has developments on our weather.
Leeward sides will dry up by the middle of the day. High temperatures running into the mid to upper 80s. And those winds still very brisk and breezy, and that's why the small craft advisory is on for all coastal waters, and that's why the wind swell on the east side is still elevated. That's where a high surf advisory is posted. The big swell that rose up over the weekend in town is on the way down, but we still got some head-high sets, still some fun stuff rolling into the South Shore. So again, more showers due in tonight and tomorrow, especially for Maui and the Big Island. Drier by Wednesday, and those breezy winds will hold into the weekend. Keep it here on 08 News Now. We'll have all your severe weather up.
A lot of people are still talking about this story. A 6.2 magnitude earthquake centered about 17 miles off Hawaii Island rattled residents across the state yesterday, but officials said there's no reports of any major damage. The USGS said the quake is likely the result of bending of the oceanic plates from the weight of the island chain. The tremor did not have any impact on the ongoing eruption. Here's the HVO scientist in charge, Ken Hahn.
Well, I mean, it's related in a way that if the islands weren't here, these earthquakes wouldn't occur. So this is a kind of an after product of all the eruptions and building up these massive islands, and the weight of the islands sitting on top of the Earth's crust and lithosphere just causes kind of little snaps or pops in the crust. And so those little snaps or pops are quite large to us. But we've had a number of these, probably 10 to 15 of these in the last 150 years. As far north, actually, as around Maui, where we've had magnitude 6.8 earthquakes back in the 1870s.
As for the actual eruption, USGS says if the Empire State Building was placed on the bottom of the crater before the 2020 eruption, lava would already be reaching the 70th floor. The Empire State Building is about 1,450 feet, which is more than 100 floors. Experts say there's been nearly 1 million cubic meters of lava since the eruption started late last month. There is no threat to the public or any areas outside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park.
Kilauea's eruption continues unabated. If anything, it seems to be declining a little bit, which is what we expect, that it's going to gradually decline.
For some people, a perfect vacation is a trip to the beach, maybe the mountains, or even a city getaway. But for others, they want to see a different side of Mother Nature, a more destructive one. Ian Lee reports.
It's not often you get to see the raw power of Mother Nature, even from a safe distance. The volcano on La Palma, with its fountains of lava and rivers of molten rock, is drawing people to Spain's Canary Islands from around the world.
It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see something like this, and we just thought it was, worth making the journey.
It's witnessing scenes like this, a boulder the size of a 3-story building floating toward the sea. But with many flights grounded by this weeks-long eruption, tourists are flocking by ferry. This Frenchman calls the experience incredible with the noise, power, and beauty of the volcano. But there's a dark side to this light show. Roughly 6,000 people have been evacuated, while more than 1,000 buildings have been destroyed. And for residents, it's more than just losing their homes. This local man says he lost everything, including memories of his parents. Spanish authorities are keeping a close eye on the volcano, monitoring its every gaseous burp, quake, and the direction of its lava flow. But when the eruption will end is anyone's guess. All they can do is look on in wonder or worry. Ian Lee, CBS News.
All right, let's see what the internet is talking about in today's From the Feed segment.
McDonald's is saying mahalo to teachers. So starting today, teachers, administrators, and school staff can get a free breakfast from Mickey D's. No purchase necessary. You just need to show your work ID. So educators can receive hash browns and one of 3 sandwiches, plus a free drink. And the promotion lasts all week long. So McDonald's gave away 12 million free mahalo meals to first responders and healthcare workers last year. So they're doing something very similar for our educators.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, the Boston Marathon was held today for the first time since 2019. Nancy Chin was there and filed this report.
Benson Kipruto of Kenya.
Benson Kipruto was the first runner to cross the Boston Marathon finish line at 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 51 seconds. Diana Kipchoge, a fellow Kenyan, was the fastest female runner. For more than 20 miles, CJ Albertson from Fresno, California led the pack, but he fell back on Boston's Heartbreak Hill.
I'm just not great up any sort of incline, and I was tired.
The 125th Boston Marathon was scheduled for April 2020, but the pandemic forced it to be postponed and then canceled for the first time since 1897. The pandemic postponed this year's race 6 months and meant fewer runners and rolling start times to promote social distancing. Athletes had to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test, and masks were required on the buses that brought them to the starting line.
I was really happy that everyone was wearing their mask. I think everyone's just happy to be able to do Boston, not have to get it pushed back another 6 months.
And though there were fewer spectators, elite runner Desiree Linden from San Diego says they helped her through what she called a sufferfest.
After 13, I wanted to step off 1,000 times, but there was just too much energy on the course, and they got me through every single mile.
Marcel Hug of Switzerland won the men's wheelchair race, despite making a wrong turn in the final mile. Manuela Schar, also from Switzerland, won the women's wheelchair race. Nancy Chin, CBS News, Boston.
Brings to mind our own marathon
I
here,
know.
right?
Still a lot of unanswered questions about it. I mean, they're saying road races can have up to 500 people, but I'm sure there's way more than 500 people, myself included, signed up for the marathon.
And of course, this year we won't have international visitors, which the marathon usually gets so many attending for.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm training for nothing or what's going to happen.
You can still run. You guys, that's it for This Is Now on this Monday. Ashley's going to be back with you at First at 4. Time to remind you about this. If you have a smart TV, download the Hawaii News Now streaming app. That means you can watch Hawaii News Now anytime you want to at the touch of your remote control right there on your couch. Super convenient. Just search HNN or Hawaii News Now wherever you get your smart TV apps. Have a good day, everyone.